Welcome to the Daily Objective. And as you know, there's a war waging between Russia and Ukraine due to Russia's invasion some months ago, quite a few months ago at this point. And recently, a couple days ago, if I recall, a missile hit a village in Poland, killing a couple of people. Now, that really can feel like a game changer at the time. It certainly did. People were very on pins and needles that were paying attention to that. And then I think word got out that it was actually a Ukrainian missile that accidentally hit Poland. Of course, the I don't know if you call it conspiracy, but the allegations are out like, oh, Zelensky did it on purpose. He wants it to look like Russia did it, or just that various things are coming. There's a lot to explore here. With me is a guy here who, I mean, may someday play Zelensky. I would support that when the movie is made. It's Mark Pellegrino.
What's up, man?
Not a whole lot. So here's the way I see it, and I think this is the correct way to see it. It's whoever starts the war is responsible for what happens next. And in this case, Russia started the war. So if a Ukrainian missile drops on Poland by accident, it's still Russia's fault for starting the war. Do you think I'm missing a piece of the puzzle, or do you agree?
I do not, but I think objectivists are very unique in this perspective. So according to our perspective, the firebombing of Dresden, the dropping of bombs on Hiroshima, the firebombing of Tokyo were all legitimate means of conducting warfare, even not accepting conditional surrender from the Japanese, but unconditional surrender. And if you think about it, if you break into my house, you're not going to, you are anything that happens to you is your fault because you did what you did, and you can't then change the rules of the game and surrender on your terms. They're mine because you put me in the position where my life and property is under threat. So anything that happens from that point on is on you. It's your moral responsibility. And Rand used to use the example of somebody taking a hostage and accidentally, and the people trying to save the hostage's life, accidentally killing bystanders. All of that is on the head of the person who took the hostage. That's a very unique position and a difficult one, I think, for people to wrap their minds around who don't at least have a passing knowledge of objectivist ethics.
Yeah. Now, if Ukraine had intentionally fired at Poland, it would be a very, very strange move, but that would be an act of aggression by Ukraine at Poland. It really has nothing to do with Russia starting a war with them. It's basically Ukraine starting a new war, but that's not what happened. It was clearly a mistake. There's no reason Ukraine would want. Well, I guess the allegation is that it was supposed to make people think, oh, look, now Russia is firing missiles at everyone, that Poland as well. They're trying to expand, but I don't think there's any evidence to support that. Now, my good friend and hero, Candace Owens, has been an outspoken, I call her a Putin supporter, but she might take issue with that. She would say, no, I'm not pro-Putin. I'm just not drinking the Zelensky Kool-Aid. Here's what she tweeted.
There's a lot of conservatives in that camp. It's a scary number of folks.
Oh, yeah. What do you make of it? Is it just basically tribalism? If the Democrats, the mainstream, if CNN appears to be pro-Ukraine, then we must be the opposite? Is that kind of what it amounts to?
I mean, I think it's a moral soup that definitely includes that as an ingredient. But I also think that he, in some respects, says things that they like. I mean, they're pro-traditionalists, they're nationalists. They identify with that urge in him. And, he seems to have allied himself with thinkers who could pass off as right-wing conservatives. So I think it's an ideological similarity, too.
Yeah, although the interesting footnote or even sidebar or even parenthesis, I'll say, is that the closer you look at Putin's intellectual influences, they're very leftist or postmodernist, some of them, or just straight up communist. So the same people who are like, oh, the Democrats today, Joe Biden is a communist dictator. We need to do whatever it takes to get Biden and the Democrats out. Same people, they're perfectly comfortable with Putin, who is not only was he part of the KGB, but the sort of intellectual people that appear to be influencing him, both dead and alive. have very leftist, communist, or postmodernist persuasions.
Well, there may be postmodernist persuasions, but are they woke?
Right. So that's what it boils down to. So it's not even that today's conservatives are opposed to leftism. In fact, they seem to be kind of, in many cases, making the argument for more of a old school leftism, socialism, or which I think is how you would really explain nationalism the way it's being proposed. Basically, central planned economy, subjugating the rights of the individual, especially including the individual businessman or the businessman in a corporation, to the so-called interests of the nation. They've cozied up to that in a major way, as long as it's not, gender queer and woke, right. whatever that connotes.
Right. Provided those ideas don't go against certain traditions, certain social traditions, especially, then they're all on board. I just finished a book called The Psychology of Totalitarianism, where the guy, whose name I can't remember, is a very, very right-wing guy who believes that the Enlightenment and individualism are responsible for the mess we're in today. And what's the solution? The solution isn't any more enlightenment. It's not more individualism. It's not more reason. It's actually to understand that reason cannot grasp ultimate truths. All right. Now, yeah. I mean, it's the other side of the radical skeptic's coin who says you can't know anything.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing. They all agree that the Enlightenment and individualism is the problem. They all see that. They have that in common, making them superficially opposed to one another. When I was 14, I had rejected the religious way of life, and I was kind of exploring new ideas. And I read a book called The Intelligent Person's Guide to Atheism. Very largely unknown book. I just happened to get it from a library. So luckily I was living in a time when you can just go to a room full of books and who knows what you'll come across. And that book, yeah, it was not, written by an objectivist. So it had some, looking back, it had some philosophical sort of holes, but it was really good. It was just very pro-scientific, and just, I think, mentions the Enlightenment as being sort of what got us from the bad times to the desirable current times we live in. And I didn't realize reading that at the time, this is kind of the last of a dying breed philosophically, to be pro-Enlightenment. And time has not been on the side of the Enlightenment, culturally speaking. Time has been on the side of the Enlightenment as far as the truth goes, as far as the facts. But in the view of the culture, the Enlightenment did not age well, the way that the most influential thinkers see it. The Enlightenment is very passé, and so it's pretty amazing that, and I'm very fortunate I kind of got a grasp of that pro-Enlightenment perspective at the 11th hour of the cancellation of the Enlightenment. Here are some Candace Owens tweets. She says, the same people that told you that George Floyd was a hero, then told you that Fauci was a hero, then told you that Zelensky was a hero. Frauds, all of them, she says. Okay, that's
that's about as intellectually deep as a thimble.
Right.
The more I see of Candace Owens, the less I like of her.
She truly is a charlatan, and
she's a shill.
Yeah, and she represents just how low conservatives will sink for the sake of having a big tent and winning elections as Republicans and stuff like that. I mean, I know we've spoken, and I've spoken about how uncomfortable it must make Ben Shapiro at times, but still, I mean, the fact he got himself into this situation kind of speaks to how what he and people like him are willing to stomach and to sort of align themselves with. All right, now here's Candace Owens being a little bit more, I think, maybe nuanced. She says, the false dichotomy presented by the Western press was that you had to be either pro-Putin or pro-Zelensky. I support neither. At least Putin doesn't pretend to be a good person. Zelensky does, while robbing the American people and attempting to start World War III.
Okay, so this is her claim that foreign aid and his attempt to get other nations backing him to help him beat down the bully is an attempt to start World War III and robbing people of their money. Now, I mean, I'm not for foreign aid. I don't think any objectivists are. Definitely think those things should be taken care of by voluntary associations. I'm not for the government putting our money anywhere overseas. I'm not even for them putting it into improvements in infrastructure at home. But that still doesn't imply that he's robbing the American people and trying to push us towards this massive conflagration that we call World War III. I mean, Putin's a genuine threat. And this should be a wake-up call to Europe that they need to get their shit together with respect to the military. They've been relying on us far too long. And, I'd like to see, once they start spreading those expenditures over their military for self-protection, how well their social systems hold up.
Yeah, it's very hard to explain to people, just like it's hard to explain to people, like, I'm pro-enlightenment, but that, like, the woke today, that is not the enlightenment. That is actually the counter-enlightenment. So it's hard to explain to sometimes to people kind of where I'm standing. And like in this case, like, yeah, we're opposed to foreign aid, period. But as long as we are sending out foreign aid, I'd much rather see it go to Ukraine or to Israel than to some of the other unsavory
to the Palestinian Authority or to Russia or to China.
America literally funds both sides of the Arab-Israeli conflict, right? And along with Egypt, and just like literally name a country, like I say, throw a dart at the world map, and you'll probably hit a country that America sends billions of dollars to. So I think it's telling that the New Right and the libertarians and all these, maybe the left still to an extent, they love to emphasize like Ukraine and Israel as like, I was like, oh, why are we sending them all these billions of dollars? Okay, like Egypt gets the same 50 billion a year that Israel gets, and Israel is doing something basically good with that 50 billion. I mean, they wouldn't need that money if they had more of a assertive, hands-on, like hawkish sort of assertive approach to self-defense. But nonetheless, what they're doing with that 50 billion is like developing this big missile defense system so that they can just thwart Hamas rockets, and then, and that until Hamas runs out of rockets so they can cease fire while Hamas, rebuilds and prepares to attack again.
And uses the I don't know, around $100 billion that they get for building up that kind of guerrilla infrastructure, not helping their people, not building hospitals, not building up the infrastructure, not creating a democratic state where people can vote. Where people have a certain amount of sovereignty. Nope, they use it to fund their military objectives.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so in this case, Candace Owens is saying that like Ukraine is, Zelensky and the Ukrainians are trying to start World War III by doing what? By standing their ground, by insisting that they have a right to self-defense from this less free country attacking them. Like what would Candace Owens have them do differently? I mean, yeah, like they're asking for aid, but like it's not like such an unusual thing in the times we live for one country to ask another for help in some way. And it's unfortunate that Ukraine gave up their weapons, I think in the late 80s or early 90s when the Soviet Union disbanded, the Soviet bloc disbanded. My understanding is that the Ukrainians, part of the agreement was that they agreed to give up their nukes, which ended up kind of biting them, it seems, because if they still had them, clearly Putin would have thought twice about it.
So much for disarming a population, making it more peaceful or making it less susceptible to attack. This goes to all the anti-gun people out there who think that, once we take away guns, it's going to solve all our problems. No, it's not. It makes you vulnerable to that parasitic criminal element in the population that's preying on people who are weaker, and it makes you particularly vulnerable to the state. I'm not saying that we could beat the state in a one-on-one confrontation, but it surely gives them pause if they know 300 million people are armed.
That's true. And even so, the anti-gun perspective is not as ridiculous as the people saying that the country's military should disarm.
Yes.
Because the government's job is to, use force for self-defense, retaliatory force. And people like Ron Paul for years ago when he was running for president, when people would point out the Iranians are building a nuke and they're not complying with their agreement to stop building a nuke. They're giving guided tours of this development of their nuclear bomb. And Ron Paul is just like, they don't even have a nuke. You know who hasn't complied with disarmament agreements? the United States, we need to be disarming. I mean, literally, like.
Okay, that's where libertarianism really crosses the Rubicon into stupid. I mean, look, Rand said something that I mean, of course, I paraphrase everything Rand says, so take it as you will. But she enlightened me to the concept that states that don't promote and defend individual rights really have no legitimacy. They're not legitimate states at all. Okay, I hate to break it to people who think there's a myriad of ways to approach the human condition with respect to government, but there isn't. And there could be a whole lot of ways to operate systems that respect rights, but you got to respect individual rights. Regardless of what the form of it is, it has to respect individual rights. Iran doesn't do that. It has no legitimate reason to exist. And as far as I'm concerned, you could beat the fuck out of it with total and complete legitimacy. And they have no right as a sovereign nation, they're not sovereign, they don't respect the sovereignty of their citizens, they can't claim sovereignty on their own, to acquire nuclear weapons. They do not. And you should prevent that with extreme prejudice. You should destroy their capacity to build that stuff up. Destroy it. Let the people, let the brave women of Iran take that place over. Not kick those mullahs out in the desert on their asses. And let's have a free country over there. Then they can claim sovereignty. Then they can claim the capacity to defend themselves, because that's the only kind of country that can claim that capacity.
Yeah, who would have known that the protesters brave enough to really stand up to the government in Iran would be a bunch of girls, and that men around the world would basically be silent about it. You know, all the saviors of masculinity and gender roles, and, you know, men as providers and protectors. They're silent about, you know, a bunch of girls standing up to a government, to their police and military in a country where they're subjugated. It's I guess it speaks to the fact that liberty and, you know, just basic rights are not something that's very important to virtually anybody in today's landscape.
It's frightening. So
it is. Yesterday, Paul Joseph Watson, he's an InfoWars guy, so that's like the Alex Jones network.
Is he still with InfoWars?
I don't know if he still is, but that's a hard stigma to shake off as far as I'm concerned. He says, quote, preliminary assessments from U.S. intelligence later suggesting the missile was fired by Ukrainian forces at an incoming Russian one, end quote. He goes on. So Ukraine lied about it to frame Russia and potentially escalate World War III? Insanity. And Candace Owens quote tweeted him saying about Zelensky, he's a piece of shit. Some of us have had the courage to call this out from the very beginning. All anyone needs to do is Google Igor Kolomoisky to learn the truth about Zelensky and his motives. Too many cowards in media. Do you know who?
What is this? What is this? I don't know this person, and I don't know what Candace Owen has over Zelensky. What has he done that has so offended her? If any of our listeners can tell us on the chat if they know any of these people Candace Owens is referring to and why, you know, they're on the warpath against Zelensky, I'd love to know.
She's a very opportunistic charlatan, whatever the word, pundit. Like, just if she sees an opportunity to build her audience, so
she's a demagogue.
She's an absolute demagogue. I don't think it's controversial to allege that. And that's what she's doing. She knows there's an audience for the anti-vax stuff. She knows there's an audience for the blaming of Ukraine for what's taking place. She's getting that audience to be her audience. And recently with people like Kyrie Irving, posting like Holocaust denial documentaries, and with Kanye's statements that he's been making over and over and over again, Candace Owens, she's kind of using it to say, like, look, we're going to disagree as families do. Like, we're going to not always agree, but like Black Americans really do need to come together and unite. This is like the names of her episodes and the thumbnails. It's like Black America needs to unite. And she won't condemn any of the like Jew bashing stuff coming out of any Black celebrities. She's not exactly endorsing it. She's not condemning it either. She's kind of like saying, like, look, Blacks, we need to everyone should have some compassion for what Blacks are going through in this country. And also us Blacks, we need to unite, galvanize. To her, it's like, if she can get more Black people to not vote or if she can get more Blacks to vote Republican, then that's all. Like, that's the bottom line for her. She can bring them over to the Republican Party as conspiracy nuts, as anti-Semites, as whatever it is. If she can bring more people into the Republican camp, then all is well and she's doing her job. And it's just so there's just so little respect for actual facts and for reality, clearly. And so it's very disheartening that this is like this person is taken seriously. And this is sort of like a mark of the times we live in, that just these like internet charlatans can grow so big and influential. I guess we can read a few super chats. We got Allie Beard with $2 saying, where Lex Friedman stand then?
Well, I mean, Lex Friedman is a pretty open guy. I think he's a guy who's about listening to ideas from every part of the spectrum and giving them their fullest voice, so you can make those decisions on your own. He's not a demagogue at all,
Right.
Not at all. He's facilitating the exchange of intellectual ideas, I think, in a more subtle way than, say, a Rogan is. You know, Rogan still has been bitten by some of those conspiracy bugs, but Lex, I think, is just a curious dude who's very smart and wants to know the truth.
Yeah,
wouldn't you say?
I agree. So like Joe Rogan, he was never a career intellectual. He was like the first mainstream celebrity to associate with Alex Jones way back in, the mid 2000s or whatever, which shocked me at the time. But of course, at this point, everyone, including a past US president, has been on the Alex Jones show. But yeah, like, so, I mean, Joe Rogan, he's kind of like the everyman. That's kind of his brand, and, make what you will of it. Lex Friedman, he is like a thinker. He is very, like, it's clear it matters to him, and the audience loves it. They support him and they love him because it's clear that, like, he cares about what's being discussed and arriving at truth. Someone like me at times gets annoyed, or frustrated, like, okay, you can't be skeptical forever. At a certain point, there is right, and like there is the truth. But I don't know. I mean, but that's a loaded.
But as you know, in the highly polarized atmosphere that we live in today, his communication style, I think, is a lesson for all of us, especially me. I mean, I'm that guy too. I get very frustrated with certain people, and I can get aggressive in the way that I present my ideas. But he's sort of Socratic, he doesn't draw people out to trap them the way a Socrates would, but he draws them out to get so you see the full extent of their ideas. You see it from the root to the branch, and I think that's great. I think you'll have a thorough sense of where that thinker is coming from by the end of his 2.5, 3 hour shows.
Yeah.
And that leaves you better off, not worse off.
Did you see Lex interview Kanye a couple weeks ago? That was pretty
Oh,
good.
God, I haven't seen that.
I mean, Kanye is Kanye. He goes off in every which direction. But Lex kept on bringing it back to Kanye's, anti-Jewish statements that he's made. And he really pushed Kanye on it, the way I see it. So it's really...
Was Kanye able to articulate an answer? Or, I think the guy needs medication.
Well, yes, he probably does, but also, there's he's sort of a product of the intellectual influences. Like Rogan, Kanye is not an intellectual heavyweight. He's not the motor of history intellectually.
I don't even think he's in the strawweight division.
Right. So Kanye, what he was saying, he said at one point, Kanye said, "Look, if I say the Kardashians, you're not thinking of the one man in that family, like Rob Kardashian. You're thinking a bunch of women." So, like, that's kind of what he's saying. Like, when I say Jewish media, I'm not saying like all Jews or like that every last one of them is Jewish. He's saying like that's when I'm talking about the media, like, look at how many Jews are in powerful positions in media. That's kind of like the point he was trying to make. He at one point he yelled at Lex Friedman and said like I don't trust you. Like, don't you telling me I need to apologize better? Like, I already apologized and that wasn't enough. I just there's some heightened moments of that interview. But to answer Ali's question in the super chat, Lex, I think, is very anti-invasion of Ukraine. He wants to interview Putin, which, is on brand for him. Not sure, what good would come of that, if any, or if it's trying to show
what's his reasoning?
He wants to show the human side of everyone.
Yeah, we don't need to see the human side of tyrants. I think that's right. I think that empowers the tyrant. But what's his reasoning for being anti-Ukraine?
Anti the invasion of Ukraine, I said.
Oh, he's anti the invasion of. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So
okay, good.
Glad you asked, so nobody misunderstands. He feels very. I don't know if he's originally from Ukraine or if he's originally from Russia, but his sympathy is definitely with the invading.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Marilyn with $2 says, hell yes, it's Russia's fault. I mean, yeah, there's really no way around it. I mean, like libertarians or anarchists out there, guys like comedian Dave Smith, who I guess also works with the Libertarian Party in some capacity. He went viral talking to Joe Rogan, saying like he's like outraged. He goes, for people to say this was unprovoked, Putin was, he was guaranteed both in writing and spoken word that NATO would not expand eastward, and then they're for Ukraine to talk to NATO about joining. That is a clear instigation with Russia. That's what right. Dave Smith was saying.
That's true. Now that's definitely the Putin line. But how is acquiring the protection of an alliance, a military alliance, threatening to him? Since that alliance isn't about initiating force anywhere, it's not about expansionism. It's just about defending yourself against the potential threat of a very real malignant actor over their borders. So, why is that a provocative thing to do?
Because anarchists, they hate government so much that they take the side of the less free government, because they hate seeing, they're triggered by the view of a successful, basically free country like Ukraine, somewhat free, much more free, relatively free. There's a guy on YouTube named Stephen Michael Davis. He's like a medium-sized channel. He's not huge, but somehow I ended up subscribed to him, and he did videos. He does videos on an ongoing basis criticizing and debunking the Putin talking points. He did at least a couple about Dave Smith's remarks to Joe Rogan about Putin, and it's really good. So people should check that out. Stephen Michael Davis, he said that he asked people when they say like Putin was guaranteed like that there'd be no eastward expansion of NATO. So I asked people, he said like, what was the name of that agreement? Isn't there always the name of an agreement whenever like countries make a deal? There was no agreement. It was maybe mentioned in passing when the Soviet Union was disbanding. Maybe this will happen. Maybe that'll be the case. And at the end of all that, it was agreed that sovereign countries can make their own decisions moving forward. So it was never guaranteed to Russia that NATO would not expand eastward.
Aren't they also making claims of Ukrainian atrocities against Russians in the Ukraine?
Yeah, there's allegations of that. There's allegations that Ukrainians are Nazis. Like they find a video of somebody doing the Hitler salute, and that proves that that America is helping liberate a Nazi country from the. It's just that people, I guess they want to promote the idea that Ukraine is just as bad as Russia, if not worse, but at least just as bad. So there's no reason to support one over the other. But the one invading, the one doing the invasion, is clearly not the one to be sympathetic to. Marilyn with $4 more. Thank you. Kmetiha Bischak with €2. Thank you for that. And Phil with 5 British pounds says, we seem to get the cretinous status politicians we deserve, especially with the most expensive electricity on the planet now here in the UK.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Life could be much, much better in a capitalist system, and a system where the government, in virtue of it being a capitalist country, does not do anything more than protect your rights.
And yet these statists will post graph after graph how renewable energies are actually cheaper than fossils. And they'll post graph after graph of how state housing is so much better than private housing. And there's, how do you convince them, how do you convince anybody in an atmosphere where quote unquote science and statistics are being used to bolster the statist point?
Well, when once they couldn't argue anymore that capitalism doesn't raise our standard of living, once it became so abundantly clear that capitalism does raise our standard of living, it became about the environment, and it became about inequality. right? So like, yeah, even if we're all getting richer, but some people are getting much, much richer than everyone else or than others. So that's not fair. So intrinsically unfair the way they see it. And that became their kindergarten level argumentation. Kiana Pellegrino, thank you for the $5. And those are all the super chats I see. Thank you all for the super chats. I guess we can wind it down there, lest we, give too much attention to evil. Coming up today, it's at 7 p.m. UK time. It's the Briefly Objective premiere with me and this guy, Mark Pellegrino, whoever that is. The topic is Tribalism Poisons Your Thinking. Link in the chat. Well, that's something I'd like to see.
Wait, when is this?
So the Briefly Objective is like another channel that this channel is sort of sending traffic to. So apparently we made the cut. So
hey, cool. Nice.
All right. At 10 p.m. UK time, it's Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasser. And the subject is Happy Anniversary, a Defense of Marriage Act. I'm guessing they're not really. I'm guessing they're not really wishing a happy anniversary to that act. They're going to talk about it because I think that they're like most decent people these days, supportive of gays' right to be gay and to live the best gay life they can. So anyway, check it out to find out where exactly they're coming with this or what angle they're taking. All right. Good to see so much greenery on the scenery. All these members with the green screen name. Thank you for supporting the channel. Everybody, please hit the join button to become a member of the channel so you can unlock all types of emojis and a green name. It's way better than gray and pale and pathetic, like being a non-member. All right. Good times. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, everybody out there, for your support. And we'll be back tomorrow for the Daily Objective. Thank you and goodbye.